Hello. This lesson introduces students to the textile industry. What you're looking at in this slide is an outline of the basic terminology for textile design from this lecture. Spinning, it's going to start with spinning, fiber production, etc. We'll look at memo samples a little bit and what those are, what railroaded fabrics look like, looking at purchasing, purchase orders, etc. So these are some terms to look at, and these terms are often what will be on your quizzes. So this is your first main lecture. So what is a textile? So I start the lecture thinking about, just think about when you got up this morning. I'm still in my robe, I must admit, cotton. You likely threw off the bed covers, maybe threw on that nice cotton robe to keep warm, bathed, used a towel that was made of cotton, walked across nylon carpeting, maybe a wool area rug. So we use textiles in everyday life. And so knowing that our clients know a lot about textiles, and it's important for us to be that much more engaged and learned on textiles, the textile process, fibers, etc. Here's just a great fact. If you're questioning, or if your family's questioning, why are you studying interior design? In the United States, the textile industry employs over 1 million people. It is a $70 billion industry, and it is the third largest among basic manufacturing industry. So textiles are huge. They surround us, right? And such kind of the poetic phrase, textiles hold society together. So it's not only that they're around us and that we utilize them, but if you think about early on in societies, it would be the women who would gather together around a loom and create, their own area rugs and blankets for their family, go out and procure leather for shelter, etc. So textiles hold a society together. It's worth studying and a great future for you in textiles. So some key terms that I would like you to know is the difference between upstream and downstream within the textile industry. So upstream and downstream, I'm going to have you visualize a stream. And a stream might start from a spring, or maybe from a mountaintop where the snow melts. So upstream is the source. And then downstream, as the stream turns into a river, which trickles down into the ocean, downstream, as it goes down, is the destination. So professionals who deal with textiles may work either upstream or downstream. So when we talk about upstream, the source, that refers to the business immediately. So like the suppliers, right? People who pick the cotton, right? Who spin the yarn, who, gather the cattle. So upstream is the source, who actually then turn something in from a fiber to a yarn and weave it into a textile. So that's upstream. Downstream is the destination. So that's where once a fabric is created, it then goes downstream to people to purchase or to process into goods. So someone makes a piece of fabric and it goes to living spaces or pottery barn to turn into a piece of furniture or bedding, etc. So difference between upstream and downstream. I would like you to know that because there are careers within both. This slide shows the textile manufacturing flowchart. Basically from start to finish how a textile is made. From fiber production to spinning the yarn, manufacturing of the textile, most often through weaving. Once a textile is woven, it is then converted, meaning a textile could be dyed, it could be printed, it could be finished, and then distributed. So let's take a further look at those. So to begin, you have to have fiber productions. So fibers are the basic component of any textiles. Fibers are small, hair-like strands of either natural or synthetic materials that is then bound together to create yarns thick enough to weave. So think about it. We have to begin with a fiber, something that looks very fine, maybe like a fiber of your hair. So if we were in person or if I had a camera on, I would have you just pick out one hair fiber. Now think about having 3 or 4 of those hair fibers spun together to create a yarn. So I'm twisting my hair right now and then woven into a textile. So you have to procure or produce the fiber. Procure means like you have to pick the cotton, you have to shear the sheep, and to produce a fiber, that would be like a synthetic fiber, like you would have to make nylon and a nylon fiber from polyester, petroleum based. So fiber production, step 1. Step 2, once you've collected and procured that fiber, you then take those very thin fibers and then you spin them into a yarn. So think about a silkworm. That has a long, thin monofilament fiber. Cotton has a lot of tiny, tiny little fibers. Well, you can't really do anything. Picture a cotton ball. You can't really do anything with a little cotton ball, right? You have to spin that cotton into a yarn. So first pick the cotton, then spin the cotton, for example, and then manufacture that into a textile. So manufacturing textiles either through, you can weave it, needle construction, and other non-woven processes. So there are non-woven processes. So if you think about something like that looks like a plastic sheet of paper, like vinyl, well, that wasn't woven, it was extruded. But weaving, which is done on the loom, refers to both the process of combining yarns by intertwining warp and weft strands, and we'll learn more about that in a few weeks, as well as the pattern used to intertwine them. There are 3 basic types of weaves, which we will study: plain, satin, and twill, and then later we will look at more complex weaves. In this image, you're looking at examples of grayish goods or gray goods. They're usually called grayish goods. Grayish goods sounds just like what it is. It's that first step of creating a textile where it's woven and it looks kind of like a dingy white color. And that's why it's called grayish or gray goods. It's not finished. It hasn't been dyed. It hasn't been bleached. It hasn't been, nothing's to it. It's just there it is. It's been woven. So that's what you're looking at there. Once a fabric is created, woven or created, it's then the textile is converted through dyeing, printing, and finishing. So here you see a white fabric that's probably been cleaned and bleached and treated from the grayish good, and now it's being printed with this very big, bold, fun flower design. Textile conversion. So we will study dyeing, printing, and finishing about halfway through the semester. once a fabric is woven and finished and printed and treated and all those wonderful things and ready to go, it's then distributed. So it's at this point where we move from upstream, the manufacturing process, to downstream, distributing those textiles. So a couple things that I would like you to know in terms of distribution of textiles. Textiles are distributed in rolls or bolts. So in this example, you're looking at a roll of fabric. So there's the cardboard roll, and then the fabric is actually woven around it, and then it's going to be sold by the yard. So when I'm doing a project, I might have 50 of these, at my workroom. So they're sold by the yard. You can also purchase, as an interior designer, by the bolt or by the half bolt. And basically what a bolt is just a really big roll. And so a full bolt will have 60 yards on it, and a half bolt will have 30 yards wrapped around it. So why do that? As a designer, we typically order fabric by the yard. Like, I need 13 yards to create that duvet cover. Done. I'll order 13 yards. I don't need any more, or I don't need any less. So why order these bolts or half bolts? So I have several colleagues who work for the hospitality industry. And let's say they were designing custom drapery treatments for a whole hotel. Well, they would want to purchase by the bolt because they are ordering hundreds of yards of fabric, and there is a large discount for ordering in volume. So it's like Costco. You order a lot, but you get it for, more than half the price. So distribution. The final steps of the textile manufacturing flowchart isn't officially on the flowchart list yet, but we're going to go ahead in Phoenix College. We're going to add number 6, disposal and recycling. So a little bit about disposal and recycling. We have to think about our sustainable future, not just about climate change, but kind of how we dispose of our goods. It's something that we think about within the textile industry. So we need to consider a fabric's lifestyle. It's like birth to death. So how it's made, we have to think about sustainability. Are we putting chemicals into the air, into the water? When it's being used, let's say you've specified a fabric or even a paint or something, or a carpet, is it off-gassing? Is it hurting the people who are using the product during its life? And then we have to think about the end of life. Where does it go at the end of life? So there's startling statistics, what you're looking at on the right. There's startling statistics that each year about 4 to 5 billion pounds of carpet goes to our landfill. That's a lot. It makes up a large majority of what's in our landfill. About 3.5% is just carpet in our landfill. And only 1% currently, and this is why I pass this on to you, only 1% of broadloom carpeting right now is actually recycled. So keeping in that kind of continuous loop. Only 1%, that's bad. We need to get better at that. So more and more manufacturers are of carpet and fabrics, they're doing a buyback program, or they'll receive back their product so then it can be recycled. So look around your area when you're pulling carpet out of a client's house, carpet and padding, if there's any recycling in our area to do that. So we're going to look at some more, just some more feedback on distribution of finished pieces of textiles. So who are textiles sold to? So textiles are sold to manufacturers of finished product. So here's something interesting, an interesting fact. There are only a handful of fabric manufacturers in the United States, meaning there's only a few manufacturers actually making the fabric, those grayish goods, etc. So who do they sell to? And so that's what we're looking at here. Well, first they're going to sell to manufacturers of finished products. So they're going to sell to Martha Stewart for Macy's. They're going to sell to Pottery Barn. They're going to sell their products to, all these retailers. And this is really quite interesting because there was a time right before the recession that one fabric mill closed in America. One mill closed, and I was trying to order upholstery, for example, for a model home, and I could not order any upholstery because they were out of fabric. They were out of gold chenille. So in the 90s and 2000s, well, maybe the 2000s, gold chenille with the Tuscan look, everybody wanted it. So Bassett didn't have gold chenille fabric. Pottery Barn didn't have gold chenille fabric, right? All these places didn't have this chenille fabrics because they all buy from the same mill. So let me just read this and see if there's anything more about selling from manufacturers to these mills to retailers. Textiles are sold to manufacturers from the mill to manufacturers of finished product, such as window treatment manufacturers, furniture manufacturers, wall covering fabric manufacturers, etc. Bed and bath, kitchen and commercial, linen manufacturers, etc. And this can be done in two ways. The first is to select from textiles that are already produced. So I'm going to go ahead and just pretend like I am Krabbit or Pottery Barn or something. I'm Krabbit. I'm Krabbit. I'm a distributor of fabrics, and I'm going to go to the mill, and I want to buy some fabrics so I can have to add to my fabric line at Krabbit. So they're going to go to the mill, or they're going to go to a trade show. They could actually go to the factory showroom. The product manufacturer may also contract for exclusive rights to a fabric so that no other entity may purchase it or sell it. The second way is that they can actually place an order and have something made custom. So what does that mean? So let's just look at Martha Stewart or Pottery Barners here. They go to the mill and they want to order this white fabric for a duvet cover that they're making. Well, they can go to the manufacturer and they're probably going to just pick from some stock white fabric, right? They want this. It's a white stock fabric. It's an open line. They're going to use it. Martha Stewart's going to use it. Macy's going to use it. It's okay. It's a nice white sheet. But what about this? Maybe this is Pottery Barn, and Pottery wants this to be exclusive for them, so they might have this made. Or if the mill has already printed or made this fabric, they may ask for it to be an exclusive line. So textiles are also sold to distributors, jobbers, or fabric companies. So as an interior design professional, you are going to order fabrics wholesale to the trade, meaning if your clients are going to spend $50 for a Durley fabric or a Krabbit fabric, you're going to purchase it through one of these distributors or fabric companies such as Durley, Krabbit, Fabric Cut, etc. And you're going to buy it to the trade wholesale half price. Durley, Krabbit, Pindler & Pindler, Robert Allen, Stroheim & Roman, Sunbrella, Design Tex, all these are names of local and national distributors. So as a designer, just let me be clear, you're not going to go to a retailer to purchase fabrics. You're not going to go to Pottery Barn to purchase the fabric unless you just need something local. But you're not going to go buy tons and tons of yards from there. You're going to buy it direct to the trade from these distributors. So I think I put a question on the quiz. Can an interior designer go directly to the mill and buy yardage? And the answer is no. We as an interior designer don't get to go to the handful of mills, but instead we go to these fabric distributors. And that's where we get our memo samples, and that's where we order our fabrics for our clients. Textiles can be sold through sales representative to large corporations or the government, etc. So kind of they can not have to go through the distributor, they can go directly to the mill if they're buying large enough amounts. Textiles can be sold to piece goods to store retailers. So a lot of retailers, so when I say retailers, I'm going to say like Joann's or Hobby Lobby. They often buy overstocked, discontinued, or flawed goods. And so there's a reason why, as an interior designer, we might have to charge our client $30 for a fabric, and your client may find the fabric at Joann's, like, oh my gosh, I found the same fabric at Joann's for $15 a yard with my coupon. Well, you can't guarantee that yardage, that fabric, and its quality. So that's a good answer to clients who find it cheaper. Sometimes they don't care, sometimes they do. It depends on the client. So to the trade. To the trade, that's going to be you when you're an interior designer. How do you procure textiles? So we're going to look at that, and I do want you to know, again, that difference between an open line fabric and an exclusive fabric. So once a fabric is manufactured, it is sampled and sold to the trade by fabric companies or distributors. This is going to be your first exercise. One of your first exercises this week is to get to know those different fabric companies. So it's made, and then samples are put together and put into books, and then they're given to these fabric companies or distributors. These distributors go to international trade shows, and they use their creativity to pull together all these different fabrics and collections where they can put them into books and get those out to interior designers. Each company will have a different name and number, but they are the same of fabric. So we're talking about an open line fabric. This will be true for different types of carpet, different types of fabric. An open line fabric means that although each company, Kravet, Durley, Pindler and Pindler, they can all call it a different name. You know, they can call it Visions Peacock, and someone could call it Journey Blue. I mean, all the companies can call it something different, but it is the same fabric. It's called an open line fabric. Whereas a fabric purchased solely for one company, such as Ralph Lauren, is called an exclusive fabric. These are typically more expensive and unusual. So again, open line fabrics. Every company has a white linen, right? Every company has a basic cotton stripe print. Those are open. A lot of people carry the same fabric and just put a different name on it. An exclusive fabric is only to be sold to one fabric company or distributor. So that makes them more expensive, usually more unusual, and maybe the difference between a $25 a yard fabric and a $200 a yard fabric. So I just gave you a link if this lecture is posted, where you can go click here to view Pindler's exclusive line of Sunbrella fabrics. So here you can go to Pindler and Pindler, who carries Sunbrella, and they have Sumbrella fabrics that they and they alone carry. So you won't be able to go to Hobby Lobby or go anywhere else and find these Sumbrella fabrics. They're exclusive to Pindler and Pindler. So getting a little long, this lecture, so I'm not going to click on that, but please do just look at the difference between open lines and look at some exclusive lines of fabric. All right, one thing I do want you to be aware of is die lots. So distributors purchase job lots of several pieces of a fabric, and they're purchased from the same die lot, which means they were dyed at the same exact time, right? Within that same hour, this blue fabric, or one of these fabrics, was dyed all at the same time, and it has the same dye lot, right? And this makes a certain sense of consistency. When a job lot is purchased, some yardage is to manufacturer, which cuts the fabric into sample books and samples to distribute to the trade. The challenge with die lots is that when you're purchasing die lots, you want to make sure that you purchase from that same lot. So I will repeat this over and over, or Susan will during the semester, that no die lot is ever exactly the same. So if you are purchasing blue fabric from two different dye lots, and you put those two fabrics and you sew them together to create a duvet cover, you are going to see a slight variation between those two fabrics. Now, if you selected that same fabric for two different dye lots for, let's say, window treatments, and one is on one end of the room and one is on the other end of the room, and they're not sewn together, you probably wouldn't notice. But do note, if this is a true or false question, no two dye lots are ever the same. That is true. So when our library opens back up, or when you do end up going and getting a job somewhere, you'll look at different showrooms and how different showrooms have different design studios, how different fabric libraries, how they all display all of their material samples. So there's different ways to do this. You can click on click on Brandt's showroom in Scottsdale, Arizona. If you want to click on that website, you can take a look at their showroom. That's open to the trade. And if you're a young designer, that might be a showroom that you want to visit. But there's different ways that our fabric distributors will get interior designers samples, right? We need samples of a fabric. We're not going to bring a bunch of bolts to our client. We need samples. So samples can be put in hardbound books, architectural binders, like up here. Like carpet samples and heavier samples, they're usually in books. Different types of books. That's my phone. They can be hung. They can be ringed. So these are just different ways that there can be collections of different types of books. You can hang them, you can put them in books, you can stack them together, so take a look at those. And then I have some images of these. These are samples that have been booked. Sometimes they're booked, like here's Cravat, booked according to Performance Ultra Suede. So this entire book is Performance Ultra Suede in different colors. Sometimes they're booked by collection of topics. So this is Reserve Royal Cardinal, and they'll have all different tan, white, blue, red, brown fabrics that all work together nicely as a collection. Here's a different collection over here. Maybe some are booked by weaves. So there's different ways that you'll see that fabrics are booked, that interior designers can look through samples that way. Here's just some smaller samples. These are small swatches that I put on a card, and we usually see these for commercial. So if you're ordering from Knoll or from Design Text, you might have samples booked like this where you can order some of these stocked fabrics. And you also receive memo samples. So in this class, since we're online this semester, you will be ordering memo samples. As of last semester with the COVID, Kravet was closed for getting out samples to students, but we are able to collect samples from different vendors. And so you're going to be getting some samples. But these are called memo samples, and you might have a sample in a book in your studio, and then you want to order the larger memo sample, and these are free to the trade. You get the sample, it has the label on it and all the information. So here's what a memo sample might look like, and here is what the actual label is. So on the label, you'll include things like this. And so if you need to take a little pause, maybe take a pause now, because I really want you to just see what's involved, all the information that you're going to have to learn when ordering fabrics. So take a little break right here if you need to. All right, so first of all, you need to know who the fabric distributor is. In this case, it's from Kravet, and it's Kravet Basics. So rather than Kravet Couture, this is Kravet Basics. There is a pattern name and a pattern color. So this is ginkgo leaf linen. That's that ginkgo, nice Japanese pattern right there. Color linen. So a lot of times they also have a color number. So this would be ginkgo leaf linen, but the linen color is also 1611. So this might come in different colors, and so it's nice to put both the name of the color and the actual color. This is the family, gray beige, that this falls under. So that helps designers because it helps us narrow our search. So I'm looking for a gray beige pattern, right? I could even say by Sarah Richardson. So Kravet has a lot of collections by popular designers. Sarah Richardson is one of those HGTV or one of those designers, and so she has her own collection. So this is from her collection. It talks about the width of the fabric. So remember that those fabrics came on rolls. A typical roll is 54 inches wide and is sold by the yard. So this is 54 by 5 inches wide. It can be used for multi-purposes, probably from upholstery, light upholstery to window coverings to bedding. It is a print, meaning that that pattern is just printed on versus actually like embroidered or woven. The style is Asian botanical floral. Yeah, that's the ginkgo leaf. So maybe if you want to have a little bit of Asian influence in your design, that helps find that. It's unit of measure. It's sold by the yard. It has a finished, like a soil and stain released finish. There is a repeat, 9 inches by 16 inches. So that means if you take a look at some of these patterns, so let's just look at this right here. It repeats itself over here every 6 inches, or 16 inches, excuse me, 16 inches. So this tells you kind of, it helps you gauge the scale of the print. The direction is that it's going up the bolt. So that means this wave-like pattern runs up the bolt versus horizontal on it. Comes from China. Here's fiber. The fiber content is 100% linen versus a blend. Durability medium. Flammability, it is flammable and clean with a solvent. So just some things about the different prints. Different fabrics. So take a look. I just put a couple in there so you can see this is an upholstery fabric that's a geometric that's been woven. The repeat is very small. So this is a very small geometric pattern. The content is a blend. Instead of being 100% of one thing like linen, it's several things woven together. And it's very durable. It's meant for upholstery. This is from Cravat Couture, and if Cravat Couture gives yourself a little clue, it's very expensive. And this is over $200 a yard. Why? Why is that $200 a yard when the ginkgo print was like, you know, $30 or $40 a yard? Well, it's because it does come from the Cravat Couture collection, so it's probably an exclusive. And it is embroidered, meaning, so instead of having a print of this pretty vine-like pattern, that pattern was embroidered in India. I want you to know this for the exam. We as designers, we're going to order fabric by the yard. And again, fabric is sold on a 54-inch bolt, and it's sold by the yard. And just in case you missed this sometime in your high school and college careers, there is 36 inches in 1 yard, or 3 feet in a yard. So it's sold by the yard. So 1 yard is 3 feet. 2 yard is 6 feet, right? So, etc. So I might give you a little question like, what is the dimension of 2 yards of fabric? The dimension of 2 yards of fabric. So 54 inches stays fixed. So that's the width of the bolt. 1 yard is 36 inches. 2 yards is 72 inches. So 2 yards is 54 inches wide by 72 inches. So calculate that. Regular versus railroaded fabrics. So here's taking a look at our bolt again. So a normal pattern runs up the bolt. Okay, runs up the bolt. So if there's a stripe, it's running up the bolt. A railroaded fabric runs like little tracks, railroad tracks, runs horizontal on there. So in this example, if this is like a regular stripe, like for drapery treatments, it runs up the bolt. But for upholstery, it's easier to upholster if it's railroaded. So this fabric, I imagine, is railroaded. So here's just a different picture again of basically 2 fabrics that look very much the same. The fabric on the left is railroaded, right? Runs perpendicular versus along the bolt, right? So if you want that stripe for drapery treatments, it's nice that it rolls just standard. Heavier fabrics like upholstery, it's nicer that it's railroaded. I won't go too much into this, but there is a question about purchase orders. So here is from my old design business many, many years ago. This was for one little apartment, and these were just the fabrics that I was ordering from Cravat. So for Cravat, I had to order quantity 1.5 yards of and 26398-13, and that's the color is black, and it was for Nero Granada. So the first is the name, then the color, Teardrops Licorice. And sometimes manufacturers will have numbers and names, sometimes just numbers. So you just have to take a look at it. So you can see some of these have both numbers and names, and some of them are just a number. No big deal. That's just how it is. Okay, so what do you need to put on a purchasing order? First of all, who are you? I'm Cal Designs. That was my design firm. Who am I ordering from? I'm ordering from Cravat Fabrics. Where do I want all this fabric? Where do I want this, $500 or $600 worth of fabric shipped to? I want it shipped to Windows and More. So just pause here for a second. So Cravat, windows and more. So I'm not going to have, this is just one purchase order. I'm not going to have $500 worth of fabric in these big rolls sent to my design studio. I'm going to have those dropped, shipped to a fabricator or workroom. So who's ever going to make my bedding and my pillows and my window treatments, windows and more, that's where my fabric is going to be dropped, shipped. So even though I'm ordering it from Phoenix, I'm going to have it sent to Mesa. So that's what drop ship means. You have to put a quantity. You have to put the price of the fabric. Look at, I found there are some fabrics, $128 a yard. Phew, that's wholesale, right? That's wholesale. That's net. So a little bit about those, and kind of, it looks like I had several apartment complex that I was modeling, several different units, and so they're all going to different units and different rooms, and so I'm giving side marks of where each of those fabrics are going. So a lot involved in ordering fabric. This is a fabric master that I give to my purchasing agent, where I attach a sample of the fabric and I put how much I want and all about that, and then I give it to my purchasing agent and then they order it. So then I send a copy also to the workroom. So your first activity, and then we wrap up this long lecture. I'm sorry, I try to keep them under a half hour. Activity 1.1 is your research project. Don't get tripped up. This isn't very difficult. Just Google search innovation in textiles or new textiles 2020. Just try to find a current article on some new textile innovations from 2020. Maybe you have to go back to 2019 or 2018. That's okay too. But just kind of, what's happening in textiles. That could be new finishes, new production methods, maybe new sustainable products. Just, find something, copy the link to the article, and write just a short paragraph about what you found. That's activity 1.1, your first activity. Activity 1.2, don't get hung up on this either. You're simply Google searching Cravat ads, Brunswick and Fee advertisements, Schumacher advertisements, Sabrella advertisements. And you're going to Google search pictures, images. So you can Google search images. And you are going to find 5 different fabric distributor advertisements. I don't want Joann's. I do not want Hobby Lobby. I do not want Pottery Barn. I want you to find 5 of these guys here. These are some big ones. And I want you to find their advertisements. And I want you to just pick one of each, and for a total of 5, and attach those and turn them into your canvas. So again, Cravat. Google search Cravat advertisements. Pick one. Here's a Cravat one right here. Fabricut. Go to Fabricut. Fabricut advertisements. Find an advertisement, save it. Go to Duralee, do the same. So you're just learning about different places that you as an interior designer will be purchasing, procuring fabrics. Here's just an example of how many beautiful Cravat advertisements there are. So I don't want articles. I don't want retailers. Stick with the distributors, and they're really spectacular. I mean, they just must have a great sales and marketing department, because they're just really fun to look at. Have a great day, and next week we begin studying fibers and their properties.